Jake Morrison wiped the frost from his helmet visor and stared across the endless, white landscape of Arcturus 7. The wind howled like a living thing, carrying ice crystals that hit his suit with tiny pinging sounds. He had been on this frozen planet for 6 months now, and still the cold amazed him. It was colder than anything on Earth, colder than the worst winter anyone could imagine. "Jake, you getting this reading?" Lisa Carter's voice crackled through his radio. She was back at the base camp, monitoring his suit's sensors from the warm command center. Lisa was their medic, but she also helped with the science work. She was good at her job and never complained about the hard conditions. "Yeah, I see it," Jake replied, looking down at the device in his gloved hands. The temperature gauge showed minus 78 degrees. This planet really doesn't want us here, does it? Jake was an engineer, and his job was to make Arcturus 7 ready for human families to live on. It was called terraforming, which meant changing a planet to make it more like Earth. The company that sent them here believed this frozen world could become a new home for thousands of people. Jake wasn't so sure about that, but it was his job to try. He trudged through the snow toward a metal tower they had built last week. The tower collected data about the weather and sent the information back to their base. But something was wrong. With it today, the signals were weak and full of static. "How's it looking out there?" Ryan Hayes asked over the radio. Ryan was their plant expert, always trying to find ways to grow food in impossible places. He stayed inside most days, working, with seeds and soil samples in his little laboratory. "Cold and white, same as always," Jake said. He reached the tower and opened his toolkit. The metal was so cold it would freeze human skin in seconds, but his thick gloves protected him. "I think ice got into the electronics again." This happened a lot on Arcturus 7. The planet seemed to fight back against everything they tried to build. Ice would form in places where it shouldn't be possible. Storms would come from nowhere and tear apart their equipment. Sometimes Jake wondered if the planet was alive and angry at them for being their Amy. Bell's voice joined the conversation from the communications room. "Earth Command wants our weekly report in 3 hours. Should I tell them about the tower?" "Problems? Tell them we're handling it," Jake said. He didn't want the people on Earth to worry. They had spent millions of dollars sending this team to Arcturus 7. If the mission failed, it would be years before anyone tried again. Jake worked carefully on the tower's control box. Inside, he found exactly what he expected. Ice had formed around the main circuit board, shorting out the connections. It was a simple fix, but it took time in the brutal cold. His fingers were getting numb, even inside the heated gloves. While he worked, Jake thought about home. He missed the warmth of a summer day on Earth. He missed trees that weren't frozen solid. He missed his sister Kate and her 2 young sons. They lived in a small town in Ohio, where the worst winter day was still warmer than the best day on Arcturus 7. "Jake, you need to see this." Lisa's voice was different now. She sounded excited and maybe a little scared. "What is it?" Jake asked, still focused on the wiring. "I'm picking up some strange readings on the motion sensors. Something big is moving around the perimeter of the base." Jake stopped working. The motion sensors were placed in a circle around their camp to warn them about avalanches or equipment failures. They had never detected anything that moved by itself. "How big?" he asked. "About the size of a large dog, maybe bigger. It's been circling our camp for the last 10 minutes. Jake felt his heart beat faster. Earth Command had told them that Arcturus 7 had no native life. The planet was supposed to be completely dead, frozen for thousands of years. That was one reason they chose it for terraforming. No life meant no complicated environmental issues to deal with. "Are you sure it's not an equipment malfunction?" Jake asked. "I ran diagnostics twice. The sensors are working fine." Something is definitely out there. Ryan's voice came through the radio, sounding worried. Could it be a piece of debris blown by the wind? Not unless debris can change direction and move in patterns, Lisa replied. This thing is definitely alive. Jake finished his work on the tower and packed up his tools. His mind was racing. If there was life on Arcturus 7, everything would change. Earth Command would want to study it before allowing any terraforming to continue. The mission could be delayed for years. I'm heading back, Jake said. Keep monitoring those sensors. As he walked back toward the base, Jake noticed something that made him stop. In the snow near his feet were tracks. They were bigger than any dog tracks he had ever seen, with 4 clear paw prints and claw marks. The tracks were fresh made, within the last hour. Lisa, I found tracks, he said into his radio. What kind of tracks? Jake knelt down for a closer look. The prints were deep in the snow, which meant whatever made them was heavy. The spacing between the prints showed it had been running or moving quickly. They looked like wolf tracks, but much bigger. Whatever made these weighed at least 100 pounds, maybe more. The radio was quiet for a moment. Then Amy's voice came through, sounding nervous. Jake, you should get back here quickly. The motion sensors are going crazy. There are multiple contacts now, at least 4 or 5 of them. Jake stood up and looked around the empty landscape. He couldn't see anything moving, but that didn't mean much. The blowing snow made it hard to see more than 50 feet in any direction. His hand moved to the emergency beacon on his belt. If he pressed it, a rescue signal would go out to Earth Command. But he didn't press it yet. Instead, he started walking faster toward the base. His boots crunched in the snow with each step. The wind was getting stronger, and the temperature was dropping as the short day moved toward night. Jake, hurry up, Lisa said. One of them is really close to the main building. As Jake reached the top of a small hill, he could see their base. Camp below. It looked tiny and fragile against the vast white wilderness. Smoke rose from the heating systems, the only sign of human life on the entire planet. And then he saw it. A dark shape moving near the buildings, much larger than he had expected. It looked like a wolf, but the size was wrong. This animal was as big as a small bear. The creature stopped and looked up the hill directly at Jake. Even from a distance, he could see its bright yellow eyes watching him. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then the wind shifted, and the creature was gone, disappeared into the swirling snow like a ghost. 3 days passed since Jake first saw the wolf creature. The team tried to go back to their normal work, but everyone was nervous. The motion sensors kept picking up movement around their camp, especially at night. Whatever was out there seemed to be watching them. I don't like this, Amy said during breakfast. She sat at the small table in their dining area, stirring her coffee with shaky hands. What if there are whole packs of these things? What if they're dangerous? Ryan looked up from his tablet, where he was reading plant data. Maybe we should contact Earth Command and tell them what we found. Not yet, Jake said firmly. He was eating synthetic eggs that tasted nothing like real ones. We don't know enough about these creatures. If we report them now, they'll shut down the whole mission and send us home. Lisa was checking her medical supplies at a cabinet near the kitchen. Jake's right. We need more information first. So far, they haven't tried to hurt us or damage our equipment. That we know of. Amy muttered. Jake understood why his team was worried. They were 4 humans alone on a planet millions of miles from Earth. If something went wrong, help was months away. But Jake also knew that discovering life on Arcturus 7 could be the most important thing that ever happened to them. He wanted to learn more before making any big decisions. The morning was quieter than usual. Jake spent time fixing a heater that had broken during the night. The cold on Arcturus 7 was so intense that their equipment needed constant repairs. Ice would form inside machines that were supposed to be sealed. Metal would crack from the temperature changes. It was like the planet was slowly eating everything they brought. Around noon, Jake noticed that the main power cable to their communication array was acting up. The cable ran outside, buried under the snow to protect it from the wind. But something had disturbed the snow above it, creating a long trench. "I need to check the power line," Jake told Lisa over the intercom. "Something's wrong with the signal strength." "Be careful out there," she replied. "The weather report shows a storm coming this afternoon." Jake put on his heavy suit and grabbed his repair tools. The suit was like wearing a small heater that covered his whole body. Without it, he would freeze to death in minutes on Arcturus-7. Outside, the wind was already getting stronger. Dark clouds were building on the horizon, moving fast across the sky. Jake followed the trench in the snow, looking for damage to the chew. Buried cable. What he found made him stop and stare. A cable hadn't been damaged by ice or wind. Something had dug it up deliberately. The metal covering was scratched and bent, but not broken. It looked like an animal had been investigating it, trying to understand what it was. "That's impossible," Jake said to himself. Animals didn't study human technology. They might chew on cables or make nests near warm equipment, but they didn't carefully examine things like this. He knelt down to fix the cable, but the wind was getting so strong it was hard to work. Snow was starting to fall heavily, and Jake could barely see 10 feet in any direction. The storm was coming faster than expected. Jake tried to radio back to base, but the damaged cable meant the signal was weak. All he could hear was static and broken words from his team. "Lisa. Can you me?" he said into his radio. "Jake. Storm. Get back." Lisa's voice came through in pieces. The wind was howling now, and the snow was falling so thick that Jake couldn't see the base camp anymore. He tried to remember which direction he had come from, but everything looked the same in the white storm. Jake started walking what he thought was the right way, but after 10 minutes he realized he was lost. The GPS in his suit wasn't working properly because of the electrical interference from the storm. He was alone in a blizzard on an alien planet, and his team had no way to find him. That's when Jake made his first big mistake. Trying to get to higher ground to see better, he stepped onto what looked like solid snow. Instead, it was a thin crust covering a deep crack in the ice. Jake fell through and dropped 15 feet into a narrow crevice. He landed hard on his back, and pain shot through his shoulder. His suit's heating system was still working, but one of his air tanks was damaged. The gauge showed he had maybe 2 hours of breathing time left. Jake tried to climb out, but the walls of the crevice were smooth ice. Every time he got a few feet up, he would slip and fall back down. His gloves couldn't get a good grip on the frozen surface. "Help!" he shouted, but the wind above was so loud that his voice disappeared. Even if his team was looking for him, they would never hear him from down here. Jake sat in the bottom of the crevice and tried not to panic. His engineering training had taught him to stay calm and think through problems step by step. But this wasn't a broken machine or a failed circuit. This was life and death. The cold was already getting through his suit. Jake could feel it starting in his fingers and toes, then moving up his arms and legs. Hypothermia was setting in. He had maybe an hour before he became too weak to keep trying to escape. That's when he heard something above him. At first, Jake thought it was just the wind making strange sounds. But then he heard it again, and it definitely wasn't wind. Something was moving around the edge of the crevice. Jake looked up and saw a dark shape against the gray sky. Yellow eyes looked down at him, and Jake's heart started beating fast. It was one of the wolf creatures, bigger than he had imagined. The animal was huge, probably weighing 200 pounds or more. "Go away," Jake said quietly, not wanting to make it angry. If the creature decided to attack, there was nothing he could do to defend himself trapped in the crevice. But the wolf didn't leave. Instead, it started moving along the edge of the crack, like it was looking for something. Jake watched as the animal disappeared, then came back a few minutes later, carrying something in its mouth. The wolf dropped a thick branch down into the crevice. The branch was about 6 feet long and strong enough to support Jake's weight. It landed right next to him. Jake stared at the branch, then looked up at the wolf. The animal was watching him with intelligent eyes, like it was waiting to see what he would do. "You want to help me?" Jake asked. The wolf made a low sound that wasn't quite a bark or a howl. It sounded almost like it was trying to communicate. With him, Jake grabbed the branch and used it to brace himself against the ice walls. With the extra support, he was able to climb up slowly. His damaged shoulder hurt with every movement, but he kept going. When Jake finally pulled himself out of the crevice, he expected the wolf to run away. Instead, the animal stayed close, watching him carefully. Jake could see that it was a female, with thick silver fur and scars on her muzzle that showed she was experienced and tough. The wolf started walking in a specific direction, then stopped and looked back at Jake. When he didn't follow, she came back and nudged his arm gently with her nose. "You want me to follow you?" Jake asked. The wolf walked a few more steps, then looked back again. Jake realized she was trying to lead him somewhere. With no other choice and his air running low, he decided to trust her. The wolf led Jake through the storm, somehow knowing exactly where to go, even though Jake couldn't see anything. She would stop when he fell behind, and several times she blocked him from walking in directions that looked safe, but probably weren't. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, Jake saw the lights of their base camp through the snow. The wolf had led him straight home. The edge of the camp. The wolf stopped. She looked at Jake one more time with those intelligent yellow eyes, then disappeared back into the storm. Jake stumbled toward the main building, and Lisa met him at the door. "Jake, we've been trying to find you for hours." "Are you hurt?" "I'm okay," Jake said, pulling off his helmet. "But Lisa, we need to talk. These creatures, they're not just animals. That wolf saved my life." 3 weeks passed since the wolf saved Jake from the storm. The team had long discussions about what it meant. Lisa believed the wolves were much smarter than normal animals. Ryan thought maybe they were just curious about the humans. Amy still wanted to report everything to Earth Command, but Jake convinced her to wait a little longer. The weather was getting worse as Arcturus 7 moved deeper into its long winter season. The temperature dropped to -85 degrees, the coldest they had recorded. Their heating systems were working at maximum power just to keep the base camp warm enough for humans to survive. Jake spent most of his time fixing equipment that kept breaking in the extreme cold. The water recycling system froze twice in 1 week. The backup generator stopped working when ice formed inside the fuel lines. Even their food storage units were having problems maintaining the right temperature. "This planet really doesn't want us here," Ryan said during dinner. He was eating heated soup from a metal can, one of their emergency food supplies. "Maybe we should consider that this mission isn't possible." "We're not giving up," Jake replied firmly. "Every terraforming mission has challenges. We just need to find better solutions." Lisa was reading medical reports on her tablet. "The cold is affecting all of us. We're using more calories just to stay warm, and our vitamin D levels are getting low from lack of sunlight. We can handle it for a few more months, but long-term habitation here will require major changes." Amy looked up from her communication equipment. "I've been thinking about those wolves. We haven't seen them for 2 weeks now. Maybe they moved somewhere warmer. Jake had been wondering about that too. Since the storm rescue, he had hoped to see the silver female wolf again. He wanted to understand more about her and her kind, but the motion sensors hadn't detected anything for days. Animals often change their behavior when the weather gets extreme, Lisa said. They might be hibernating or migrating to a different area. The next morning, Jake was working outside on the main power coupling when he heard something that made him stop. It was a sound he had heard before, during the storm 3 weeks ago. A low whining noise that wasn't quite a howl. Jake looked around but couldn't see anything. The sound came again, closer this time. It was definitely one of the wolves, and it sounded distressed. "Lisa, come to the communication room," Jake said into his radio. "I think one of our wolf friends is back." "On my way," Lisa replied. Jake stayed very still and listened. The whining sound was coming from behind the storage building, about 50 yards from where he was working. He walked slowly in that direction, not wanting to scare the animal away. What Jake found behind the building made his heart race. It was the same silver female wolf that had saved him from the storm. But something was terribly wrong. She was lying in the snow, and Jake could see she was exhausted and probably injured. In her mouth, she was carrying something small and dark. As Jake got closer, he realized what it was. 2 tiny wolf pups, barely bigger than his fist. They weren't moving. The mother wolf saw Jake approaching and lifted her head. Her yellow eyes looked desperate and pleading. She set the pups down in the snow in front of her, then looked directly at Jake and made that whining sound again. Jake knelt down slowly, keeping his movements calm and gentle. The pups were clearly in trouble. Their fur was matted with ice, and they were so still that Jake wasn't sure if they were alive. They looked like they had been frozen for hours, maybe days. "Lisa, I need you out here right now," Jake said into his radio, trying not to let his voice show how worried he was. "Bring the medical scanner and anything we have for treating hypothermia." "What's wrong?" Lisa asked. "The wolf is back, and she has 2 pups that are dying from the cold." The mother wolf watched Jake carefully as he examined the pups without touching them. She didn't growl or show any signs of aggression. Instead, she pushed the pups closer to Jake with her nose and backed away a few steps. Jake couldn't believe what he was seeing. The wolf was asking for help. She had brought her dying babies to the humans because she somehow understood that they might be able to save them. Lisa came running from the base with Ryan close behind her. Amy stayed inside to monitor the situation on the communication systems. "Oh, my God," Lisa said when she saw the scene. "Those pups are nearly frozen solid." She knelt down next to Jake and pulled out her medical scanner. The device was designed for humans, but it could detect basic life signs in any warm-blooded creature. "They're alive, but barely," Lisa said, reading the scanner display. "Body temperature is critically low. Heartbeat is very weak. They have maybe an hour before their organs start shutting down." The mother wolf was pacing back and forth, watching everything they did. She would come close, then back away, like she wanted to help but didn't know how. "Why did she bring them to us?" Ryan asked. "How does she even know we might be able to help?" Jake looked at the wolf, remembering how she had saved him from the storm. "She's smart enough to understand that we have tools and knowledge that she doesn't. She's watched us work, seen our equipment. Maybe she figured out that we might have ways to fix problems that she can't solve herself." Lisa was already thinking like a medic. "We need to get them warmed up slowly and carefully. Too much heat too fast will shock their system and kill them. We need controlled warming and probably some kind of nutrient solution." "Can we use the medical bay?" Jake asked. "It's designed for humans, but I think we can adapt it." The biggest Problem is that we don't know anything about wolf physiology. What's safe for a human baby might be deadly for a wolf pup. Jake made his decision quickly. We have to try. Look at her. The mother wolf had stopped pacing and was sitting in the snow, watching them with those intelligent eyes. She seemed to understand that the humans were trying to help, and she was waiting to see what they would do. Ryan, go start warming up the medical bay, but keep the temperature low, Jake said. Lisa, what do we need to know about treating hypothermia in animals? Basic principles are the same, Lisa replied. Gradual warming, maintain circulation, provide nutrition if possible. But Jake, if we try to help and they die anyway, it could. Make the mother aggressive. Wild animals can be unpredictable when their young are threatened. Jake looked at the wolf again. She wasn't acting like a wild animal. She was acting like a desperate mother who had run out of options and was trusting strangers with the most important thing in her life. She saved my life 3 weeks ago, Jake said. Now she's asking us to save theirs. We have to try. Very carefully, Jake reached toward the pups. The mother wolf tensed, but didn't move to stop him. Jake picked up the first pup, and it was like holding a small frozen rock. The tiny animal was so cold that Jake could barely feel any life in it. They're worse than I thought, he said to Lisa. We need to move fast. Lisa picked up the second pup, and together they walked toward the base. The mother wolf followed them, staying about 10 feet behind. She was clearly nervous about going near the human buildings, but she wasn't going to abandon her babies. At the entrance to the base, the wolf stopped. She wouldn't come inside, but she lay down in the snow where she could see through the door window. She's going to wait out there, Ryan observed. In this cold, she'll freeze to death in a few hours. Set up the emergency shelter next to the building, Jake said. Give her some protection from the wind, and see if we have any food that might be safe for her to eat. Inside the medical bay, Lisa was already preparing the equipment. The infant warming unit was designed for human babies, but she was adjusting the settings for smaller bodies with different metabolisms. Jake, I need you to understand something, Lisa said as she worked. Even if we do everything right, these pups might not survive. They've been hypothermic for too long. Their organs might have already been damaged. I know, Jake replied. But we have to try. Look what she did for me. She could have just walked away when she found me in that crevice, but she didn't. She risked her own life to save a stranger from a different species. Lisa placed the first pup in the warming unit and began monitoring its vital signs. Heart rate is improving slightly. That's a good sign. Jake put the second pup in a second warming unit that Ryan had quickly modified. What do we do about nutrition? They're probably starving as well as frozen. I'm working on that, Lisa said. I think I can modify our 4 solution to provide basic nutrients, but I'm guessing about the right concentrations. Too much or too little could kill them. Through the window, Jake could see the mother wolf lying in the emergency shelter Ryan had set up. She was watching the building intently, waiting for any sign of what was happening to her pups. How long before we know if this is working? Jake asked. Lisa checked the monitors showing the pups' vital signs. If they're going to survive, we should see improvement in the next few hours. Body temperature rising, heart rate stabilizing, maybe some movement. Jake sat down in a chair next to the warming units and prepared for a long wait. Outside, the coldest storm in the planet's recorded history was building strength. Inside, 2 tiny alien lives hung in the balance, and a mother waited in the snow for a miracle that only human technology and determination could provide. The first 6 hours were the hardest. Jake sat in the medical bay, watching the 2 tiny pups in their warming units, checking their vital signs every few minutes. Lisa worked constantly, adjusting temperatures and monitoring their heart rates. The numbers on the screens kept changing, sometimes better, sometimes worse. "Come on, little ones," Jake whispered to the pups. "Fight for your lives." Through the window, he could see the mother wolf still lying in the emergency shelter. She hadn't moved except to change position occasionally. Even in the worst cold Arcturus 7 could produce, she was maintaining her vigil. "Jake, look at this," Lisa said, pointing to one of the monitors. "The smaller pup's heart rate is getting stronger." Jake looked at the screen and felt hope for the first time in hours. The numbers were still very low, but they were climbing steadily. What about the other one? Not as good, but not worse either. We need to be patient. Ryan came into the medical bay, carrying a steaming cup of coffee for Jake. "Any change?" "Some improvement," Jake replied. "But it's going to be a long night." Amy appeared in the doorway. "Jake, I've been thinking about what happens if we save these pups. Are we prepared for what comes next?" Jake looked at her tiredly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if there are more wolves out there? What if this mother has a whole pack? What if they expect us to help with other problems?" "We'll deal with those issues when they come up," Jake said. "Right now, all that matters is keeping these babies alive." As the night wore on, Jake found himself thinking about the engineering challenges they were facing. The warming units were designed for human babies, but wolf pups had different needs. Their fur was thicker, their metabolism was different, and their body chemistry was completely unknown. "Lisa, what do you think they eat naturally?" Jake asked. "Milk from their mother, like most mammals. But after that, probably meat. Wolves are carnivores." "What about supplements? Vitamins? Minerals?" Lisa checked her medical database on the tablet. "I don't have information about wolf nutrition, but I can make some educated guesses based on similar Earth animals." Jake had an idea. What if we're missing something obvious? What if they need specific nutrients that only exist on this planet? "What do you mean?" "Think about it. These wolves evolved here, on Arcturus 7. Their bodies are adapted to this environment. Maybe they need minerals or compounds that we don't have in our human supplies." Lisa looked at him with growing interest. "That's actually a really good point. If the mother wolf has been eating local food sources, her milk would contain nutrients specific to this planet." "Ryan," Jake called out, "we need your help." Ryan came back into the medical bay. "What's up?" "You've been studying the local environment." "For months. Have you found any organic compounds that might be important for native life forms?" Ryan thought for a moment. "Actually, yes. There are some interesting mineral deposits in the ice formations. I found traces of elements that don't exist on Earth, or exist in very different concentrations." "Could you analyze what we have? Maybe create a supplement?" "I could try, but it would take time, and we'd be guessing about the right amounts." Jake looked at the pups again. They were slightly warmer now, but still unconscious. "How much time do we have?" "If they don't start?" "Eating soon. Maybe another day or two," Lisa said. "Their bodies are using up stored energy just to stay alive." Jake made a decision. "Ryan, start working on those supplements. Use your best scientific judgment. Lisa, keep monitoring their vital signs. I'm going to work on improving these warming units." "What are you going to do?" Lisa asked. "I'm going to engineer a better solution. These units are designed for human babies in Earth conditions. We need something designed for wolf pups on Arcturus 7. Jake spent the next 4 hours in the workshop, taking apart spare electronics and rebuilding them. He created temperature sensors that could detect the exact heat distribution across the pups' bodies. He built humidity controls that could maintain the right moisture levels for their fur. He even designed a circulation system that would simulate the gentle movement of air they would feel in a natural den. "Jake, you need to see this." Lisa called from the medical bay. Jake rushed back to find Lisa staring at one of the monitors with excitement. The larger pup just opened its eyes. Jake looked down at the warming unit and saw a tiny face looking up at him. The pup's eyes were bright blue, and though it was still very weak, it was definitely alive and aware. "Hello there, little one," Jake said softly. The pup made a small sound, barely audible. It was the first sign of real life they had seen. "What about the other one?" Jake asked. "Still unconscious, but vital signs are stable. I think your equipment improvements are helping." Over the next few hours, both pups began to show more signs of recovery. The larger one was moving slightly, and the smaller one's breathing became more regular. Ryan returned with a liquid supplement he had created from local mineral samples. "I mixed the most common elements I found in the ice cores," Ryan explained. "If the mother wolf has been eating local food, these minerals should be familiar too." The pup systems. Lisa carefully administered small amounts of the supplement through feeding tubes. The pups' bodies seemed to accept it well, with no negative reactions. "Jake, look outside," Amy said from the window. Jake looked out and saw the mother wolf had stood up. She was pacing back and forth, like she could sense that something was changing with her babies. "She knows," Jake said with amazement. "Somehow. She knows they're getting better." "How is that possible?" Ryan asked. "Maybe she can smell changes in their scent, or hear sounds we can't detect," Lisa suggested. "Animals often have senses that are much more sensitive than ours." As the second day passed, the pups continued to improve. The larger one began to move around in its warming unit, and the smaller one opened its eyes for the first time. They were still very weak, but they were clearly going to survive. Jake hadn't slept for almost 48 hours, but he was too excited to feel tired. He had watched human engineering and medical knowledge save 2 alien lives. It was the kind of miracle that made him proud to be human. "We did it," he said to Lisa. "We actually saved them." "We're not done yet," Lisa replied. "They're going to need care for several more days, maybe weeks. And we still don't know how to reunite them with their mother safely." "One problem at a time," Jake said. "The important thing is that they're alive." Through the window, the mother wolf was still maintaining her watch. She hadn't left her position for 3 days, not even to eat or drink. Her dedication to her babies was absolute. "Ryan, do we have any food we could offer her?" Jake asked. "I've been thinking about that. We have some emergency meat rations that might be safe for her. Let's try it. She's been out there for 3 days. She has to be starving." Jake took a portion of the meat outside and placed it near the shelter where the mother wolf was waiting. She looked at the food, then at Jake, then back at the food. After a moment, she began to eat, but her eyes never left the building where her pups were recovering. "She trusts us," Jake realized. "She's accepting our help, not just for her babies, but for herself too." As Jake watched the wolf eat, he thought about what this meant. They had created a bridge between 2 species, built on mutual understanding and the universal bond of caring for the young. The mother wolf had shown incredible intelligence and courage by bringing her babies to the humans, and the humans had shown their greatest strength by refusing to give up when lives were at stake. "Lisa," Jake said as he came back inside, "I think we're witnessing something that's never happened before. True cooperation between humans and an alien species." "What do you mean?" "She didn't just bring us her babies to save. She brought us a chance to prove what humans are really capable of. And we proved it." The pups were sleeping peacefully in their warming units, their breathing steady and strong. Outside, their mother was resting in the shelter, finally able to relax knowing her babies were safe. Jake sat down in his chair and allowed himself to smile. For the first time since arriving on Arcturus 7, he felt like they were exactly where they were supposed to be. 2 weeks after saving the pups, Jake's team had settled into a new routine. The baby wolves were growing stronger every day, and their mother, who Lisa had started calling Luna, had become a regular presence around the base camp that Luna no longer stayed outside in the cold. Jake had built a small heated shelter attached to the medical bay where she could stay close to her pups while remaining warm. The shelter had a clear window so she could watch the humans caring for her babies. "She's learning our daily schedule," Lisa observed during breakfast. "She knows when we check on the pups, when we feed them, even when we change their bedding." Jake looked through the window at Luna, who was lying in her shelter grooming her thick silver fur. "She's doing more than just watching. I think she's studying us." "What do you mean?" Amy asked. "Yesterday, when I was fixing the temperature control in the pup's warming unit, she kept making specific sounds. When I looked at her, she was pointing with her nose toward the problem area. She knew something was wrong before I did." Ryan put down his coffee cup and stared at Jake. "You're saying she can diagnose equipment problems?" "I'm saying she's smart enough to recognize patterns and notice when things aren't normal. That's pretty advanced thinking for any animal." The pups were now strong enough to move around in a small enclosed area Jake had built for them. They played with each other, wrestled gently, and explored their environment with curious noses. The larger pup, which the team had started calling Storm, was especially active. The smaller one, nicknamed Frost, was more cautious but equally intelligent. "Jake, come look at this," Lisa called from the medical bay. Jake found Lisa watching the pups with fascination. Storm was playing with a simple puzzle toy that Lisa had created from spare parts. The toy required pushing different colored buttons in a specific sequence to open a compartment containing a treat. "He figured it out in less than 10 minutes, Lisa said. "And now watch Frost." The smaller pup had been watching her brother play with the toy. When Storm finished and moved away, Frost approached the puzzle and completed the sequence perfectly on her first try. "She learned just by watching," Jake said in amazement. "That's not just intelligence, that's advanced problem-solving ability." "It gets better," Lisa continued. "I made the sequence more complicated, and Storm taught himself the new pattern. Then he showed Frost how to do it by going slowly so she could see each step." Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold planet. They're not just intelligent. They're communicating complex information to each other. Over the following days, Jake began to pay closer attention to how Luna interacted with his team. He noticed that she used different body positions and vocal sounds when she wanted different things. A low whine meant she was worried about her pups. A soft chuffing sound meant she was pleased with something. When she sat perfectly still and stared at a person, she was trying to get their attention for something important. "I think she has a vocabulary," Jake told his team during dinner. "Not words like humans use, but a consistent system of communication." "Can we learn to understand it?" Amy asked. "I think we already are," Jake replied. "Watch this." Jake went to the window that looked into Luna's shelter. He made eye contact with her and pointed toward the medical bay where her pups were playing. Luna immediately stood up and made the soft chuffing sound that meant happiness. Then Jake pointed toward the outside door and made a questioning gesture with his hands. Luna's ears flattened as she made a sharp huffing sound that clearly meant no. "She understands pointing," Ryan said with wonder. "And she can communicate yes and no concepts." "There's more," Jake continued. "Yesterday, Luna started bringing us things. Not random objects, but specific items that she thinks we need." Jake showed them a collection of items that Luna had brought over the past few days. There were metal fragments that had broken off their equipment during storms, strange ice formations that contained the minerals Ryan had been using to make supplements for the pups, even some plant materials that had been preserved in the ice. "She's been watching our work and figuring out what's useful to us," Lisa realized. "That requires understanding cause and effect, recognizing patterns, and making predictions about future needs." But how did she learn all this? Amy wondered. Jake had been thinking about that question for days. I think her pack has been watching us since we first arrived 6 months ago. They've been studying our behavior, our technology, our daily routines. Luna probably knows more about how our base operates than we realize. That evening, Jake decided to test his theory. He went outside to Luna's shelter and sat down near the entrance. Luna watched him curiously, but didn't seem afraid. "Luna," Jake said softly, "I want to understand what happened to your pack." Luna tilted her head at the sound of her name. Jake had been using it consistently, and she clearly recognized it as referring to herself. Jake pointed to her, then held up 2 fingers to represent the pups. Luna made the happy chuffing sound. Then Jake held up more fingers and made a questioning gesture, trying to ask about other wolves. Luna's expression changed immediately. Her ears flattened, and she made a deep, mournful sound that Jake had never heard before. She began moving her body in a specific way, lowering herself to the ground and crawling forward, then standing and shaking herself violently. "What is she doing?" Lisa asked. She had come outside to watch the interaction. Jake studied Luna's movements carefully. "I think she's showing us what happened. The crawling motion could be moving through deep snow or hiding from danger. The shaking could be fear, or maybe cold, or..." Suddenly Jake understood. "An avalanche. She's showing us an avalanche." Luna continued her demonstration, using her body to show how the snow had fallen, how her pack had been buried, how she had escaped. With her pups, the story was heartbreaking and clear. "She was the only survivor," Lisa whispered. "That's why she brought the pups to us. She had nowhere else to go." Jake felt a deep sadness for Luna's loss, but also admiration for her courage. She had lost everything she knew, but she had still found a way to save her children by trusting aliens from another world. "Luna," Jake said gently, "we understand. We'll take care of you and your pups." Luna looked directly into Jake's eyes and made a soft sound that was different from any of her other vocalizations. It sounded almost like gratitude. The next morning, Jake woke up to find Luna outside the base's main entrance, but she wasn't alone. In the snow around her were several small objects arranged in a careful pattern. As Jake got closer, he realized what they were. Tools. Luna had brought them tools. There was a piece of metal shaped like a screwdriver, a stone that could work as a hammer, several wire-like materials that could be used for repairs, even some kind of natural adhesive that had frozen into a useful paste. "She's trying to help with our work," Jake told his team as they gathered around the gift collection. "She's figured out that we use tools to fix problems, and she's trying to contribute." "This changes everything," Amy said quietly. "These aren't just intelligent animals. They're a technological species." "What do you mean?" Ryan asked. "Think about it. She understands the concept of tools. She can identify what we need and find materials to help us. She's demonstrated planning, communication, and problem solving. These wolves might have their own civilization." Jake looked back at Luna, who was watching their reaction to her gifts with obvious interest. The implications were staggering. If the wolves were truly intelligent, then human terraforming of Arcturus 7 would have to be reconsidered completely. But as Jake watched Luna interact with her growing pups, he realized something even more important. Intelligence wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was the connection they had built across species lines, based on mutual respect and the shared experience of caring for the young. "Whatever we decide about the future," Jake said to his team, "Luna and her pups are part of our family. Now, we're going to figure out how to make this work for everyone." Luna made her happy chuffing sound, as if she understood and approved of his decision. In the medical bay, Storm and Frost were playing with their puzzle toys, growing stronger and smarter every day. Jake smiled as he realized that they were no longer just terraforming a planet. They were building the first interspecies community in human history. 3 months after saving Luna's pups, Jake received a message that changed everything. Earth Command was sending a rescue ship to Arcturus 7 2 months ahead of schedule. The message said dangerous weather patterns had been detected, and the mice mission was being terminated early for safety reasons. They want us to evacuate in 6 weeks, Amy read from the communication display. All equipment is to be abandoned, and the terraforming project is suspended indefinitely. Jake felt his stomach drop. 6 weeks wasn't enough time to figure out what would happen to Luna and her pups. Storm and Frost were now healthy young wolves, but they were still too dependent on human care to survive on their own in the brutal winter. What are we going to tell Earth Command about the wolves? Ryan asked. We have to tell them the truth, Jake replied. Luna and her pups prove that Arcturus 7 has intelligent native life. That changes all the rules about terraforming. Lisa was checking on the pups in their play area. They had grown much larger and stronger, but they still needed daily care and the warmth of the human base to survive. Even if Earth Command agrees to protect the wolves, they'll want to study them. Luna will be taken away from her children and put in a laboratory. Jake couldn't let that happen. Luna had trusted him with the most precious things in her life. He had made a promise to protect her family, and he intended to keep it. There has to be another option, Jake said. Over the next few days, Jake worked on a plan. He studied the rescue ship's design and capabilities. He researched Earth Command's policies about first contact situations. Most importantly, he spent time with Luna, trying to communicate the complex situation they were all facing. Luna seemed to understand that something important was happening. She had been watching the increased activity around the base as the team prepared for evacuation. Her behavior showed she was worried about changes to their routine. Jake sat with Luna in her shelter and tried to explain using the communication methods they had developed together. He pointed to the sky, then to himself and his team, then made gestures indicating leaving or going away. Luna's ears flattened, and she made the distressed whining sound that meant she was upset or afraid. I know, Jake said softly. We don't want to leave you either. Then Jake had an idea. He pointed to Luna, then to her pups, then to himself and his team. He made gestures indicating all of them together, then pointed to the sky. Luna tilted her head, clearly trying to understand what he was suggesting. Jake brought out his tablet and showed Luna pictures of Earth that he had stored in his personal files. He showed her green forests, blue oceans, and warm sunny days. Then he pointed to her and her pups again and gestured toward the images. Luna stared at the pictures for a long time. She had never seen anything like Earth's landscapes, but she seemed to understand that Jake was showing her a different world. Would you come with us? Jake asked, not sure if she could understand the concept, but hoping she would sense his meaning. Luna looked at the pictures again, then at her pups playing nearby. She made a soft questioning sound. Jake knew he was asking something incredible. Luna would have to leave the only world she had ever known and trust aliens to take her to a place she couldn't imagine. But staying on Arcturus 7 meant certain death. When the human base was abandoned, that evening, Jake called a team meeting. I want to bring Luna and her pups back to Earth with us, he announced. Amy nearly choked on her coffee. Jake, that's impossible. Earth Command would never allow it. There are quarantine procedures, biological safety protocols, legal issues about bringing alien life forms to Earth. What if we don't ask permission? Jake said quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what Jake was suggesting and the risks involved. Jake, that's mutiny, Ryan said. We could all lose our jobs, face criminal charges, spend years in prison. And if we don't do it, Luna and her pups will die when we leave, Jake replied. Is following orders worth letting an intelligent mother and her children freeze to death? Lisa spoke up from where she had been listening quietly. There's another problem. The rescue ship isn't designed to carry live animals. The environmental systems, the space requirements, the food and water needs. It would be incredibly dangerous for them. Then we modify the ship, Jake said. I'm an engineer. I can create a safe habitat area for them during the journey. With what materials? Amy asked. Everything we have belongs to Earth Command. With whatever we need to use, Jake said firmly. Some things are more important than property regulations. Ryan was quiet for a moment, then spoke slowly. Jake, if we do this, there's no going back. Our careers will be over. We'll be lucky if we don't end up in prison. I know, Jake replied. But I also know that Luna saved my life, and we saved hers. That creates a bond that's more important than careers or regulations. We're the first humans to make real contact with an intelligent alien species. We have a responsibility to do what's right, not just what's legal. Lisa stood up and walked to the window where she could see Luna with her pups. I'm in, she said simply. As a doctor, I swore an oath to protect life. That doesn't just mean human life. Amy sighed deeply. If we're going to do this, we need to be smart about it. I'll have to falsify some reports to Earth Command and delay transmitting information about the wolves until after we've left. Ryan nodded slowly. And I'll need to create a biological support system that can keep them healthy during the space journey. It's going to be the biggest challenge of my career. Thank you, Jake said, feeling relief and determination in equal measure. Now, let's figure out how to save our friends. The next 4 weeks were the most intense of Jake's life. During the day, the team prepared for the official evacuation, packing equipment and following Earth Command's instructions. At night, they worked secretly on their real mission. Jake designed and built a habitat module that could fit inside the rescue ship's cargo bay. The module had life support systems, temperature controls, and enough space for Luna and her pups to live comfortably during the 6-month journey to Earth. Lisa created medical monitoring equipment, specifically adapted for wolf physiology. She also stockpiled medications and medical supplies that would be needed if the wolves became sick during the journey. Ryan developed a food production system that could provide proper nutrition for carnivorous aliens using the ship's recycling systems. He also created environmental enrichment tools to keep Luna and her pups mentally stimulated during the long confinement. Amy worked on the most dangerous part of the plan. She had to alter the ship's manifests and cargo lists to hide the fact that they were carrying unauthorized passengers. If Earth Command discovered the deception during the journey, the entire team could be arrested when they reached Earth. Meanwhile, Jake worked with Luna to prepare her for what was coming. He showed her the habitat module and let her explore it with her pups. He used pictures and gestures to try to explain space travel and the long journey ahead. Luna seemed to understand that they were going somewhere far away together. She began spending time in the habitat module, making it familiar and comfortable for her family. 2 days before the rescue ship arrived, Jake made his final decision. He recorded a message to Earth Command explaining everything they had discovered about the wolves and why they were bringing Luna's family to Earth. To whoever receives this message, Jake said into the camera, we have made first contact with an intelligent alien species. The individual known as Luna and her offspring represent a civilization that deserves protection and respect. We are bringing them to Earth not as specimens to be studied, but as refugees seeking safety and as potential partners in building a relationship between our species. We accept full responsibility for this decision and ask that Luna's family be treated with the dignity and care they deserve. When the rescue ship Captain Martinez arrived, everything went according to plan. The habitat module was loaded as specialized terraforming equipment, and Luna's family was safely hidden inside Dot as the ship lifted off from Arcturus 7. Jake looked down at the frozen planet where so much had changed. He had come to Arcturus 7 as an engineer trying to make a dead world suitable for humans. He was leaving as an ambassador, carrying the hopes of an entirely new species. Luna and her pups had trusted him with their lives. Now Jake and his team were trusting that Earth would be wise enough to welcome its first alien visitors with open hearts and minds. 6 months later, Jake stood in a green meadow on Earth, watching Storm and Frost play in grass and sunshine for the first time. Luna lay nearby, content and peaceful in the warm air. Earth Command had been furious at first, but Jake's message had convinced them to treat the situation as a diplomatic opportunity rather than a criminal case. Luna and her family were given protected status, and Jake was appointed as the first director of interspecies relations. The terraforming project on Arcturus 7 was redesigned as a joint human-Volk colony, with Luna serving as an ambassador between the species. Her intelligence and communication abilities had amazed Earth scientists, leading to new understanding about consciousness and civilization.